The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sterile hum that matched the antiseptic smell burning in my nostrils. Rain lashed against the reinforced windows, creating shadows that danced across the polished floor. 3 a.m. and the night shift crawled by in that liminal space where time seemed suspended. My fingers trembled slightly as I adjusted my blue scrubs, the fabric worn thin from too many industrial washings. The plastic ID badge, Harper Evans, nursing assistant, hung heavy around my neck, a constant reminder of my place in the hierarchy. Through the observation window, I watched him again. The boy, patient S7, 4 years old according to the sparse file, though no one knew for certain. His small body curled into the corner of the isolation room, rocking back and forth on bare feet. The thin hospital gown hung from his shoulders, revealing skin so pale it was nearly translucent, blue veins mapping constellations beneath the surface. My breath fogged the glass as I leaned closer. Unlike the other children in the ward, he never slept, never cried. Just those low guttural sounds that raised the hair on my arms even now, after 3 weeks on his case. Still obsessing over the feral one, I flinched at Nurse Keller's voice behind me, her shoes squeaking against the freshly mopped floor. The scent of her coffee, hazelnut and artificial sweetener, wafted between us. "He has a name," I murmured, not taking my eyes off the boy. "Sammy. 7 has a designation, not a name." Keller's voice dropped to a whisper. "And Director Sterling already warned you about getting attached, especially to his kind." My jaw tightened. "He's a V-class dependent. You know the protocol." Her hand landed on my shoulder, fingernails digging slightly through the thin fabric. No touch, no names, no attachment, just monitoring and data collection until the specialists arrive. The specialists, the word hung between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. In 3 weeks none had come, though the boy's condition had deteriorated daily. The bruise-like shadows under his eyes had deepened. His skin, impossibly, had grown colder. His vitals dropped again last night, I said, keeping my voice neutral despite the knot forming in my stomach. Temperature down to 92.4. Heart rate at 40 BPM. Keller sighed. "It's not our problem to solve, Harper. The parent company has their own methods." The parent company, Roth Industries, the gleaming skyscraper downtown that cast its shadow over half the city. I'd never seen the inside, but everyone knew what happened there. Everyone knew what they were. "I'm going to check his IV." I pulled away from her grasp, reaching for the key card at my hip. "Don't break protocol," Keller warned, already retreating down the corridor. "Sterling's reviewing the overnight footage personally these days." The lock clicked as I swiped my card, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. A soft hiss, as the negative pressure system adjusted to the door opening. One step inside, and the cold hit me, not the artificial chill of hospital air conditioning, but something deeper, as if the cold emanated from within the room itself. Sammy didn't look up as I approached. His small fingers traced patterns on the floor, nails bitten to the quick, tiny crescents of dried blood around the edges. The IV stand beside him beeped softly, the bag nearly empty. "Hey there," I whispered, crouching 3 feet away as regulations required. "I'm just checking your medicine, okay?" Nothing, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. The monitors showed his heart rate dropping further, 38 BPM now. Too slow, dangerously slow for any human child. But Sammy wasn't entirely human. The file didn't specify, but the special protocols, the blood substitutes in his IV, the warnings about his episodes, All pointed to what everyone in the ward whispered about when Sterling wasn't around. V-class dependent. Vampire child. A rarity so precious that Roth Industries had established this entire facility just to study the few that existed. I reached for the IV bag, noting the serial number B-negative synthetic. The third bag this shift, and still his vitals dropped. Something was wrong. Something beyond my training or the sterile instructions in his file. The overhead lights flickered suddenly, once, twice, and in that momentary darkness, Sammy's head snapped up. His eyes caught mine, pupils dilated so wide that only a thin ring of amber remained. A sound escaped him, not the usual growl, but something higher, desperate. The hair on my arms stood on end. The monitors began to wail. The alarm shrieked through the isolation ward, red emergency lights bathing the corridor in crimson. My heart hammered against my ribs as Sammy's body went rigid, back arching off the floor at an impossible angle. Code blue, Isolation Room 7. The automated system blared overhead. Medical team to Isolation Room 7. I lunged for the emergency kit mounted on the wall, fingers fumbling with the latch. Protocol dictated immediate withdrawal from the room, securing the door, and waiting for the specialized response team. Protocol meant watching through glass as this child seized and suffered. Protocol be damned. "Sammy, I'm here," I said, voice steadier than my hands as I dropped to my knees beside him. The floor was ice cold through my scrubs. "I need you to breathe with me, okay?" His small body convulsed again, eyes rolling back to show whites threaded with delicate red veins. The IV had torn free, a trickle of watery red seeping onto the pristine floor. Not normal blood, too thin, too pale. The synthetic wasn't working. The door burst open behind me. "Evans, step away from the patient." Director Sterling's voice sliced through the alarm's wail, sharp as a scalpel. Tall and rail-thin in his immaculate lab coat, his face contorted with fury. "He's crashing," I called back, not taking my eyes off Sammy. "The synthetic isn't working. His body's rejecting it. That is not your assessment to make." Sterling's shoes squeaked against the floor as he approached, the smell of expensive cologne cutting through the antiseptic air. "You've breached containment protocol. Step away now." Sammy's small hand suddenly clutched my wrist, his grip shockingly strong. His skin felt like ice against mine, but his eyes had focused again, locked onto my face with desperate intensity. "He needs help," I insisted, something protective unfurling in my chest. "Real help, not more observation." Sterling's shadow fell over us both. "What he needs is none of your concern. You're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Two guards appeared in the doorway, their uniforms bearing the distinctive R insignia of Roth Industries rather than hospital security. Not medical personnel, enforcers. Sammy's grip tightened, nails digging into my skin. A whimper escaped him, the first human sound I'd heard him make in 3 weeks of care. "I'm not leaving him like this." The words came out before I could stop them. Sterling's face hardened. "That's not your decision, Evans. This facility exists for research purposes. The subject's comfort is secondary to data collection." The subject? Heat flooded my face. "He has a name. He's a child. He is V-class property of Roth Industries, and you are interfering with authorized protocols." Sterling nodded to the guards. "Remove her." The first guard took a step forward, hand reaching for my shoulder. In that moment, Sammy's body went rigid again, his back arching impossibly high. But this time something different happened. His lips pulled back to reveal teeth no 4-year-old should possess. Needle-sharp canines extended, and a sound tore from his throat that made everyone in the room freeze. Not a child's cry. Something ancient, predatory. The guard hesitated, hand suspended in mid-air. "He's entering feral state," Sterling said, voice suddenly tight with genuine fear. "Containment procedure Alpha." Now, my instincts screamed against every protocol drilled into me during orientation. As Sterling backed toward the door, and the guards reached for the electric restraints at their belts, I made my decision. I gathered Sammy into my arms. His body was shockingly light, bones like bird wings beneath my fingers. For one terrifying second, he went completely rigid. Then, with a small shudder, he collapsed against my chest. The inhuman growl faded to a whimper, then silence. His ice-cold fingers clutched at my scrubs, face pressed against my neck. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Sterling's voice cracked. "Put it down. You have no idea. He's calming," I interrupted, keeping my voice low, and even though my heart threatened to burst through my ribs. The alarm still blared, but Sammy's monitors had stabilized, heart rate climbing back to 60 BPM, temperature rising slightly. "He doesn't need restraints. He needs contact." Sterling's face contorted with disbelief. "That's impossible. V-class dependence, in feral state attack any human within reach. They don't cuddle." But Sammy was doing exactly that. His small body curled against mine, tremors subsiding. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, sinking gradually with my own. "Get the camera," Sterling snapped to one of the guards, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his anger. "Document this." The guard hesitated. "Sir, protocol states." "I know the damn protocol. But look at him." Sterling gestured frantically. "This is unprecedented. The council will want to see this." The council, the word sent a chill down my spine, even as I cradled Sammy closer. Everyone knew about the council, the shadowy executives who ran Roth Industries, who were rumored to be the oldest and most powerful of their kind. If they took interest in Sammy, "His vitals are stabilizing," I said, trying to redirect Sterling's attention to the medical reality rather than the research opportunity. The synthetic wasn't enough. "He needs—" "Irrelevant," Sterling cut me off, already tapping notes into his tablet. "What matters is that you've demonstrated a handling technique that neutralizes the feral response. The research implications alone." Sammy's fingers tightened in my scrubs, as if sensing the change in the conversation. A tremor ran through his small frame. "He's not a lab rat," I said, voice hardening. "He's sick. He needs proper care, not more tests." Sterling's eyes narrowed, clinical detachment replacing his momentary excitement. "What he needs, Nurse Evans, is none of your concern anymore. You're terminated, effective immediately, for multiple protocol violations." The words hit like a physical blow. Terminated. My apartment rent was already 2 weeks late. My mother's medication costs had eaten through my emergency savings. "Without this job, you can't." "I can and have." Sterling nodded to the guards. "Escort Miss Evans to HR for processing. The subject stays." One of the guards approached cautiously, hand extended. "Ma'am, you need to hand over the child." Sammy sensed the threat instantly. His body tensed against mine, a low vibration building in his chest that I felt more than heard. "Warning. He'll go feral again if you separate us," I said, meeting Sterling's gaze directly. "Is that what you want to explain to the council? Another episode? More failed data?" A muscle twitched in Sterling's jaw. "Fine. You have 5 minutes to settle him. Then you're escorted out. Permanently." 5 minutes to say goodbye to a child who had somehow, in 3 short weeks, worked his way under my skin. 5 minutes before I lost, not just a patient, but my livelihood, my stability. As Sterling and one guard stepped out, leaving the second watching warily from the doorway, I looked down at Sammy's pale face. His amber eyes stared up at me with an intelligence that belied his 4 years, understanding far more than a child should. "I have to go," I whispered, throat tight. "But you're going to be okay." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. We both knew he wouldn't be okay. Not here, not as a research subject. Sammy's cold fingers touched my cheek, the gesture so unexpectedly gentle that tears sprang to my eyes. Then, with deliberate care, he turned his head and pressed his face against my neck again. Not seeking comfort this time, communicating. I felt the sharp points of his teeth against my skin, not breaking the surface, but making his meaning clear. He was offering to turn me, a child, offering the one thing he had to give. "No, sweetheart," I murmured. "Heartbreaking. That's not the answer." The guard cleared his throat. "Time's up." With infinite reluctance, I lowered Sammy back to the bed. His fingers clung to my scrubs, face crumpling with betrayal as I gently disengaged them. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words wholly inadequate. As the guard escorted me out, Sammy's wail followed me down the corridor, no longer feral, just heartbreakingly human. The sound of abandonment, of loss. Mine pelted my face as I stood outside Silverline Pediatrics, termination papers clutched in one hand, the contents of my locker in a plastic bag. The security guard had escorted me all the way to the property line, as if I might try to break back in. Maybe I should. The thought flashed unbidden, wild and desperate. Maybe I could find a way back to Isolation Room 7. Get Sammy out somehow. Madness. The rational part of my brain knew that. Roth Industries had more security than most government buildings. And where would I take a V-class dependent child anyway? My dingy one-bedroom in the South Side district. How would I feed him? Care for him? Thunder rolled overhead as I began the long walk home, each step heavier than the last. No money for the bus. No job to return to tomorrow. Just the memory of a child's desperate eyes and the knowledge that I'd failed him. By the time I reached my apartment building, my clothes were soaked through, hair plastered to my skull. The elevator was broken again, so I trudged up 6 flights of stairs, legs burning with each step. The hallway lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows across the graffiti-covered walls. Home sweet home. I fumbled with my keys, fingers numb from cold and exhaustion. The door swung open to reveal my apartment, exactly as I'd left it 12 hours earlier, dishes in the sink, nursing textbooks piled on the coffee table, the ancient radiator clanking as it struggled to provide heat. The scent of instant ramen and desperation. I dropped my bag and collapsed onto the sagging couch, too tired even to change out of my wet clothes. What now? The termination papers included a non-disclosure agreement I'd been forced to sign. No references, no unemployment benefits, just a warning that any discussion of what I'd witnessed at Silverline would result in legal action. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mom, probably calling to see if I could send a little extra this month for her prescriptions. I let it go to voicemail, unable to face telling her I couldn't even pay my own rent now. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against my single window. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the water stains on my ceiling. In that flash of light, I saw Sammy's face again, the desperate trust in his eyes when I'd held him, the betrayal when I'd left. A sob built in my chest, breaking free before I could swallow it back. One tear, then another, until I was crying in earnest, for Sammy, for myself, for the helplessness of it all. A knock at the door jolted me upright. Not the usual neighbor's knock, not the landlord's impatient pounding. 3 precise measured taps. Warily I approached the door, peering through the peephole. The hallway was dimly lit as always, but I could make out a tall figure in what appeared to be an expensive coat. Not from this neighborhood, that was certain. "Who is it?" I called, voice still rough from crying. "My name is Alistair Roth." The voice was deep, cultured, with the faintest accent I couldn't place. "I believe you've been caring for my son." Roth, as in Roth Industries, as in the owner of Silverline Pediatrics. As in, I yanked the door open, shock overriding caution. He stood perfectly still in the dingy hallway, rain dripping from his black overcoat onto the worn carpet. Tall, impossibly elegant, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the exact shade of amber as Sammy's. Not a resemblance, an exact match. His skin was pale but not unhealthy, with that same translucent quality that made the veins at his temples faintly visible, not human. The knowledge settled in my bones with absolute certainty. "How did you find me?" I managed to ask. A slight tilt of his head, almost curious. "You held my son today, the first person to touch him in months without being attacked. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I gripped the doorframe, suddenly light-headed. "Is he okay, Sammy? He's dying." The words fell between us, blunt and terrible. "The synthetics aren't working anymore." "Nothing is." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you're here." Alistair Roth studied me for a long moment, something calculating and desperate behind his perfect composure. Then he reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope, holding it out between long, elegant fingers. "Name your price," he said, rain dripping from his coat onto the floor between us. "He's dying, and you're the only one he responds to. I need you to save my son." I stared at the envelope, rain soaked at its edges, unable to process what was happening. This man, this creature, was offering me money to save his son. The same little boy I'd been thinking about since my shift ended. The one whose tiny hand had felt so cold in mine. "I don't want your money," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I want to know what's wrong with him, what he is, what you are." Something flickered across Alistair Roth's face, surprise, maybe, or calculation. The hallway light caught the amber of his eyes, making them seem to glow. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice formal yet urgent. Every instinct screamed danger, yet the image of Sammy, alone in that sterile room, tubes snaking from his thin arms, overrode my fear. "Yes," I whispered, stepping back. Alistair crossed my threshold with deliberate steps, his expensive shoes leaving damp imprints on my cheap laminate flooring. He surveyed my apartment with a quick, assessing glance that made me suddenly aware of the laundry basket in the corner, the chipped mug on my coffee table. "You live alone," he stated, rather than asked, removing his coat with fluid precision. I nodded, watching as he folded the wet garment over his arm. Water beaded on his shoulders, but he seemed unbothered by the dampness. Up close, his presence filled my small living room, making the walls seem to contract. "What I'm about to tell you requires discretion," he said, each word measured. "I have resources to ensure that discretion, but I would prefer your willing cooperation." My throat tightened. Is that a threat? An acknowledgement of reality? He moved to my window, looking down at the rain-slicked street below. "My son has a rare condition," His body rejects synthetic blood substitutes, which is all we've been able to provide since his mother died. Blood, the word hung between us. You mean? Yes. He turned to face me. We require human blood for survival. My kind has evolved beyond the need for traditional methods of acquisition. We have donors, contracts, medical facilities. It's all quite civilized now. I sank onto my couch, trying to process this. Vampires, real vampires running multinational corporations and pediatric clinics. But Sammy's different, I said, remembering the child's desperate grip. He attacked other nurses. He's young. Control comes with age. Alistair's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw beneath. His mother was human. The hybrid physiology is unpredictable. He needs fresh blood, directly from the source, but he's been rejecting everyone we've tried. Except me, I whispered. Except you. His gaze intensified. Something in your blood chemistry calms him. I could sense it the moment I entered the building. Your scent on him, his vital signs stabilizing after months of decline. I rubbed my arms, suddenly cold. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come work for me, privately. Care for Sammy at my residence. Your blood will sustain him until we can develop a more permanent solution. You want me to be a living blood bag for your son. The words came out harsher than I intended. His expression hardened. I want you to save his life. The arrangement would be mutually beneficial. Name your salary. Any debt you have, educational, medical, would be cleared. A new apartment, perhaps, in a better neighborhood. I glanced around my shabby apartment, thinking of my mounting student loans, my mother's medical bills. Then I thought of Sammy's small face, his desperate grip on my hand. I need to think, I said finally. We don't have time for one night, I interrupted. Give me until morning. Alistair's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. Very well, I'll send a car at 7. He moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Evans? Yes? He hasn't slept in 3 days. After you held his hand, he slept for 2 hours. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. Whatever your decision, thank you for that kindness. Then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of rain and something else, something ancient and cold in his wake. I didn't sleep. How could I? I paced my apartment, made tea I didn't drink, and researched Roth Industries until my eyes burned. The company was everywhere: pharmaceuticals, medical research, technology. Alistair Roth rarely appeared in photos, and when he did, he looked exactly the same in images spanning decades. By morning, I'd made my decision. The black car arrived precisely at 7, its tinted windows reflecting the grey morning light. The driver, a woman with the same pale complexion as Alistair, opened the door without speaking. I climbed in, clutching my hastily packed bag. I have conditions, I announced as the car pulled away from the curb. The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Mr. Roth will discuss terms at the residence. The city transformed around us as we drove, shabby neighborhoods giving way to gleaming high-rises. We pulled into an underground garage beneath the tallest building in the financial district, Roth Tower, its spire disappearing into low-hanging clouds. A private elevator whisked me upward, my stomach dropping with the rapid ascent. The doors opened directly into a penthouse foyer of marble and glass. Alistair stood waiting, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, looking as though he hadn't spent the night negotiating with a desperate nursing assistant. You came, he said simply. I have conditions, I repeated, stepping into his world of wealth and cold elegance. Of course, he gestured toward a sitting area overlooking the city. Please, I remained standing. I want full medical information about Sammy's condition. I want to know exactly what's expected of me, how often, how much blood. And I want a contract with an end date. 3 months. Alistair's expression didn't change. The medical information is reasonable. As for quantities, that would depend on Sammy's needs. Small amounts frequently would be preferable to larger volumes less often. And the time limit. That's not negotiable. His voice hardened. You'll stay until he's stable, or until we find a suitable replacement. I lifted my chin. Then my salary isn't negotiable either. I want enough to pay off my student loans and my mother's medical debt, and I want it in writing that I can leave if I feel unsafe at any time. A hint of something, respect perhaps, flickered in his eyes. Agreed. The paperwork is ready for your review. But first Sammy needs you. My heart stuttered. He's here? Not at the clinic? We brought him home last night. He's not doing well. The controlled facade cracked just enough for me to see the father beneath the monster, desperate, afraid for his child. It humanized him in a way that made my chest tighten. Alistair led me through the penthouse, a sprawling space of minimalist luxury. We passed rooms filled with art and antiques that probably cost more than I'd earn in several lifetimes. Finally, we reached a door guarded by a woman with the same otherworldly stillness as Alistair. "This is Elise," Alistair said. "She's been caring for Sammy since birth." Elise nodded curtly, her eyes a deep burgundy rather than amber, assessing me with undisguised skepticism. "She doesn't look strong enough," Elise said to Alistair, as if I weren't standing right there. "She's what he needs," Alistair replied firmly. "Open the door." Sammy's room was nothing like the sterile clinic space. Here he had a proper child's room, soft blue walls, a canopied bed, shelves lined with books and toys. But the medical equipment remained: monitors, IV stands, and a hospital bed where Sammy lay curled on his side, looking even smaller than I remembered. I approached slowly, my heart breaking at the sight of his pale face, the dark circles under his closed eyes. His breathing was shallow, his small chest barely moving. "Hey, Sammy," I said softly. "Remember me?" His eyelids fluttered, then opened. Those amber eyes, so like his father's, found mine. Recognition dawned, and he reached one thin arm toward me. I sat on the edge of his bed and took his cold hand in mine. Immediately, his fingers tightened around mine with surprising strength. "He needs to feed," Alistair said from behind me. "It's been too long." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "Your wrist would be easiest," Elise interjected, stepping forward with what looked like a medical kit. "I'll prepare the site." My heart hammered as she swabbed my inner wrist with antiseptic. Sammy watched the process with hungry intensity that should have been disturbing in a child so young. "It will hurt," Alistair warned, his voice gentler than I'd heard before. "But only for a moment." I nodded, unable to speak, as Elise positioned my wrist near Sammy's mouth. The boy's eyes met mine again, questioning, waiting for permission. "It's okay," I whispered. "You can take what you need." His small teeth sank into my flesh with surprising sharpness. I gasped at the sudden pain, then the strange, pulling sensation as he began to drink. Alistair's hand came to rest on my shoulder, steadying me as lightheadedness swept through me. "Enough, Sammy," Alistair said, after what seemed like both an eternity and no time at all. "That's enough for now." To my surprise, the child obeyed immediately, releasing my wrist. Elise pressed a gauze pad to the puncture wounds, which were smaller than I'd expected. Sammy's transformation was immediate and astonishing. Color returned to his cheeks. His eyes brightened. He sat up in bed, looking around with alert curiosity that hadn't been there before. "Better?" I asked, still dizzy but smiling at his improvement. He nodded shyly. "Thank you," he whispered, the first words I'd heard him speak. Alistair's grip on my shoulder tightened fractionally. "You should rest now," he said, though whether to me or Sammy wasn't clear. I stood, swaying slightly. Alistair's arm came around my waist, supporting me with effortless strength. "I've got you," he murmured, guiding me from the room. The next few days established a routine. I gave Sammy small amounts of blood 3 times daily. Between feedings, I read to him, played simple games, or just sat with him while he slept. His improvement was remarkable. By the 3rd day, he was walking around his room, talking in complete sentences, even laughing at silly faces I made. Alistair was a constant, watchful presence. He worked from home, appearing in Sammy's room at feeding times, observing our interactions with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Sometimes I caught him staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression unreadable. On the 4th night, after Sammy had fallen asleep, Alistair invited me to join him in his study. The room was lined with books, dominated by a massive desk covered in papers and a laptop. "His blood work is improving," Alistair said, gesturing to charts on his computer screen. "Your presence is having an effect beyond the blood itself." I sipped the tea he'd provided, a rare luxury blend that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "He's just a little boy who needs connection. Blood might keep him alive, but touch, attention, those things help him thrive." Alistair studied me over the rim of his glass. Not tea, but something dark and thick. I pretended not to notice. "You're not afraid of him." "Should I be? Most humans would be." I shrugged. "He's 4. Vampire or not, he's still a child." Something shifted in Alistair's expression, a softening around the eyes perhaps. His mother said something similar once. The mention of Sammy's mother caught me off guard. What happened to her? Pain flashed across his face before the mask returned. Complications during childbirth. Her body couldn't withstand the demands of carrying a hybrid child to term. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. It was a calculated risk. We knew the dangers. His clinical tone didn't quite hide the grief beneath. She wanted him very much. I set down my cup. "And you? Did you want him?" Alistair's gaze sharpened. What an impertinent question. "You're right. I'm sorry." I stood to leave. "Wait." He sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair, the first truly human gesture I'd seen from him. "Yes, I wanted him more than I've wanted anything in a very long time." The admission hung between us, unexpectedly intimate. I sat back down, uncertain what to say. "You should know," he continued, "that the council has taken notice of our arrangement. Our governing body. They're concerned about Sammy's dependency on a human, about the security risks." A chill ran through me. "Are they dangerous?" "They're pragmatic and very old." He met my eyes directly. "They've demanded a meeting to assess you." "When?" "Tomorrow evening." "Here," he hesitated. "It would be best if you stayed in the penthouse until then, for security reasons." My pulse quickened. "You're worried they might try to—" "What? Kidnap me? Kill me?" "I'm being cautious," he corrected. "Sammy needs you. That makes you valuable and vulnerable." I thought of my shabby apartment, my few possessions. I'll need clothes, personal items, already taken care of. He gestured toward the door. "Elise has prepared the guest suite for you." I stood again, unnerved by his presumption, yet understanding the logic. At the door, I paused. "Alistair." He looked up. What happens if they don't approve of me? His expression hardened into something ancient and predatory. That won't happen. But if it does, then I'll deal with it, he said simply. Go rest, Harper. Tomorrow will be challenging. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment, with a bathroom of marble and glass, and a closet already filled with clothes in my size. I tried not to think about how they knew my measurements, or when they'd arranged all this. Instead, I showered, changed into silk pajamas that felt foreign against my skin, and tried to sleep in the too-soft bed. Around midnight, I heard crying. Sammy's door was just down the hall from mine, and his distress pulled me from bed before I'd fully processed what I was doing. I found him sitting up, tears streaming down his face. Bad dream, he hiccuped when he saw me. Oh, sweetheart. I sat beside him, opening my arms. He crawled into my lap immediately, his small body trembling. I dreamed you went away, he whispered against my neck, like Mommy did. My heart cracked. I'm right here, I promised, rocking him gently. I'm not going anywhere. I felt his little teeth graze my neck, a question rather than a demand. Are you hungry? I asked softly. He nodded against my skin. It's okay, I said, tilting my head slightly. Just a little, though. It's not feeding time yet. His bite was gentler this time, more controlled. I held him as he took just enough to calm himself, then licked the wounds closed with a small, rough tongue that made me shiver. Better? I asked, smoothing his dark hair. He nodded sleepily, already drifting back toward dreams. I laid him down, tucking blankets around him. Stay, he murmured, gripping my hand. So I stayed, curling beside him on the narrow bed, his small body fitting perfectly against mine. I didn't mean to fall asleep, but the rhythm of his breathing lulled me under. I woke to the weight of a gaze. Opening my eyes, I found Alistair standing in the doorway, watching us with an expression I couldn't decipher, something between wonder and fear. He had a nightmare, I whispered, carefully extracting myself from Sammy's grip. Alistair nodded once, stepping back to let me pass into the hallway. He fed, he said quietly, his eyes on the marks on my neck. I touched them self-consciously, just a little. He was upset. You allowed it, without supervision. He's a child, not a monster, I said, suddenly defensive. He needed comfort. Alistair studied me for a long moment. You're extraordinary, he finally said, the words seeming to surprise him as much as me. Heat crept into my cheeks. I'm just doing my job. No. He stepped closer, his presence enveloping me in that strange, cold energy. You're giving him something I cannot, something he desperately needs. Our eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might touch me. Instead, he stepped back, his expression closing. The council arrives at 7, he said formally. Elise will help you prepare. The day passed in a blur of anxiety. I spent most of it with Sammy, who seemed to sense my unease, and stayed unusually quiet. Elise appeared in the afternoon with a dress, simple but elegant in deep blue, and instructions to be ready by 6:30. They'll test you, she warned, as she helped me style my hair. Answer truthfully, but carefully. They can smell lies. What do they want from me? I asked, watching her efficient movements in the mirror. Her eyes met mine in the reflection. To determine if you're a threat or an asset. At precisely 6:30, Alistair came to escort me to the main living area. He'd dressed even more formally, in what looked like a bespoke suit of such perfect tailoring. It might have been painted onto his lean frame. Remember, he said, as we walked, they have authority, but this is still my territory. You're under my protection. The living room had been transformed. The modern furniture had been replaced with ornate antique pieces arranged in a semicircle. Candles provided the only illumination, casting dramatic shadows across the space. "Theatrical," I murmured. Alistair's lips twitched. "They're very old. They appreciate tradition." The elevator doors opened and 3 figures emerged. 2 men and a woman, all with the same otherworldly stillness as Alistair, but magnified. They moved with liquid grace, their pale skin luminous in the candlelight. "Counselors." Alistair greeted them, his voice formal. "Welcome to my home." The woman stepped forward first. She appeared middle-aged, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes like black ice. "Alistair, it's been too long." "Counselor Vivienne." He inclined his head slightly. Her gaze shifted to me, assessing. "And this is the human. This is Harper Evans." Alistair corrected, a hint of steel in his voice. "She's responsible for my son's remarkable recovery." The older of the 2 men circled me slowly. Remarkable indeed, to form such a bond with a feral child. "Sammy isn't feral," I said before I could stop myself. "He's just a little boy who's been sick and scared." All 3 counselors stilled, their attention sharpening on me like predators scenting prey. "It speaks," said the younger man, his tone amused. And with such conviction. "Harper is a medical professional," Alistair interjected smoothly. "Her insights have been invaluable." Vivienne approached me, close enough that I could feel the cold emanating from her skin. "May I?" she asked, reaching for my hand. I glanced at Alistair, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I extended my hand, trying not to flinch as her icy fingers wrapped around mine. Her eyes widened slightly. "Interesting," she murmured. "Your blood chemistry is unusual. High iron content, but something else too. Something I haven't tasted in centuries." "Tasted?" I echoed, trying to pull away. She released me with a thin smile. "Just an expression, dear." The older man stepped forward. "The child's dependency on a specific human is problematic, Alistair. You know this. It's temporary," Alistair replied. "We're synthesizing components of her blood to create a stable substitute." This was news to me. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart raced. "And if that fails," asked the younger counselor, "will you turn her? Make her one of us to ensure a permanent supply?" "That won't be necessary," Alistair said firmly. "It might be the only solution," Vivienne countered. "The boy is the last of your bloodline. His survival is not just a personal matter, but one that concerns our entire community." I felt the weight of their gazes, the cold calculation behind their concern. They didn't care about Sammy as a child, only as an heir, a continuation of whatever power structure they represented. "I've agreed to help Sammy," I said, finding my voice. "But I won't be turned. That's not part of our arrangement." Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. The counselors exchanged glances, communicating something I couldn't interpret. Finally, Vivienne spoke. "We will allow this arrangement to continue, with conditions. The human remains here, under guard. No outside contact. Blood samples daily for the synthesis work. And if the child's condition deteriorates, or if security is compromised, we reserve the right to intervene." "Intervene how?" I asked. She smiled, showing the tips of sharp canines. "Let's hope we don't need to find out." The meeting continued, details negotiated in careful formal language that reminded me of old diplomatic treaties. I stood silent beside Alistair, feeling the weight of decisions being made about my life without my input. When the counselors finally departed, I turned to Alistair. "You're experimenting with my blood." "Without telling me? I was going to discuss it with you after they left," he said, loosening his tie. It's the logical next step. Sammy can't depend on you forever. And what happens to me when you don't need me anymore? The question slipped out, revealing more vulnerability than I'd intended. Alistair's expression softened. Harper, a high-pitched scream cut through the air. Sammy, we both ran toward his room, Alistair moving with inhuman speed. We found Sammy thrashing in his bed, his face contorted in pain. What's happening? I gasped, rushing to his side. Rejection, Alistair said grimly. His body is fighting the synthetic blood we gave him earlier. We need to flush his system. I rolled up my sleeve without hesitation. Take what he needs. Alistair shook his head. Not like this. Not in panic. It's dangerous for you both. Sammy's eyes flew open, finding mine with desperate intensity. Harper, he whimpered, reaching for me. I sat beside him, gathering his small body against mine. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. It hurts, he sobbed against my neck. I know, baby. I know. I looked up at Alistair. We don't have a choice. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Slowly, Sammy, he instructed. His voice gentle but firm, just like we practiced. Sammy's teeth found my neck, sharper in his distress. I gasped at the pain, then the strange floating sensation that followed. Alistair's hand came to rest on my shoulder, anchoring me as the room began to spin. Enough, he said, after what felt like minutes but might have been seconds. Sammy, that's enough. The boy released me reluctantly, his breathing already easier, color returning to his face. I swayed, darkness edging my vision. Harper, Alistair's voice seemed to come from very far away. I'm okay, I tried to say, but the words slurred. The last thing I felt was Alistair catching me as I fell, his arms surprisingly warm around me. I woke in my own bed, sunlight streaming through windows I didn't remember opening. Alistair sat in a chair beside me, watching with an intensity that made my skin prickle. How long was I out? My voice came out raspy. Almost 12 hours. He leaned forward, offering a glass of orange juice. You needed the rest. He took more than was safe. I sipped the juice, the sweetness almost shocking after the metallic taste lingering in my mouth. Is he okay? Yes, thanks to you. Alistair's gaze was troubled. But we can't continue like this. He's becoming too dependent on direct feeding. I set down the glass. The counsel said, I don't care what they said. His voice hardened. Your safety is non-negotiable. The fierce protectiveness in his tone caught me off guard. I thought Sammy was your priority. You're both my responsibility now. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. I've made arrangements. You'll move into the master suite, adjacent to Sammy's room. It has better security, and I can monitor both of you more effectively. Where will you sleep? He glanced back at me, a hint of amusement breaking through his concern. I don't require much sleep, but there are other rooms. The implication that he'd give up his own space for my safety stirred something warm in my chest. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded once, then moved toward the door. Rest today. We'll move your things this evening. The master suite was a revelation, a sprawling space of muted luxury, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and a bathroom larger than my entire apartment. Most surprising was the connecting door that led directly to Sammy's room. This was your room, I said, as Alistair showed me the security features, panic buttons, reinforced doors, a safe room hidden behind a bookcase. Yes. He demonstrated the biometric lock on the main door. Your fingerprint has been added to the system. Only you, myself, and Elise have access. I ran my fingers over the expensive bedding, feeling out of place among such luxury. It feels strange, taking your space. It's practical, he said, but something in his expression suggested there was more to it. Sammy sleeps better knowing you're close. And you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes met mine, something hungry and conflicted in their amber depths. I sleep better knowing you're both protected. The moment stretched between us, charged with something I wasn't ready to name. Then Sammy appeared in the connecting doorway, breaking the tension. "Harper, come see. Daddy got me new books." I smiled, grateful for the interruption. "Show me, sweetheart." Life settled into a new routine. Mornings with Sammy, carefully monitored feedings 3 times daily, afternoons of play and reading. Evenings often found the 3 of us together. Sammy building elaborate structures with blocks, while Alistair and I discussed his progress, the synthesis work, or sometimes just books we'd both read. Domesticity of a sort, strange and precarious, but with moments of unexpected warmth. A week after moving into the master suite, I woke to find Sammy curled against me, his small body radiating unusual heat. "Sammy?" I touched his forehead, alarmed at the burning temperature. "Sweetheart, wake up." His eyes fluttered open, glazed with fever. "Hurts," he mumbled. I reached for the panic button. Alistair had installed beside the bed. Within seconds, he appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, wearing only sleep pants. "He's burning up," I said, already carrying Sammy toward the bathroom. "We need to cool him down." Alistair moved with inhuman speed, running a lukewarm bath, while I stripped off Sammy's sweat-soaked pajamas. Together, we lowered him into the water, his small body trembling violently. "This isn't a normal fever," Alistair said, his voice tight with worry. His body's fighting something. The synthetic blood again, possibly, or an immune response to the separation. He met my eyes over Sammy's head. "He hasn't fed directly from you in 3 days." I rolled up my sleeve without hesitation. "Then let him feed now." Alistair shook his head. "Not while he's like this. He can't control himself. He could drain you completely." "Then what do we do?" I cradled Sammy's head as he whimpered. Alistair's expression turned grim. "There's another option, but you won't like it." "Tell me." "My blood. It would strengthen him, help him fight whatever this is." I frowned. "Then do it." "Why would I object to that?" "Because afterward, he'll need yours even more. The contrast between vampire blood and human blood, it creates a dependency, a craving." Understanding dawned. "You've been avoiding this, trying to wean him off blood entirely." "Yes." His jaw tightened. "But we've run out of options." I nodded. "Do it." Alistair bit into his own wrist with practiced efficiency, then held the wound to Sammy's mouth. The boy latched on instinctively, his eyes flying open as the powerful blood hit his system. The effect was immediate and alarming. Sammy's body arched, a sound between a growl and a whimper escaping him. His eyes glowed brighter, the amber darkening to something closer to blood. "Enough," Alistair said after a moment, pulling his wrist away. Sammy lunged after it, suddenly strong and feral. Alistair restrained him with gentle but firm hands. "Harper," he said, his voice strained, "he needs you now, but be careful, he won't be gentle." I approached slowly, extending my wrist. Sammy's gaze fixed on it with predatory focus, all trace of the sweet child momentarily gone. "Sammy," I said softly. "It's me. It's Harper." Recognition flickered in his eyes. He reached for my wrist with trembling hands, then, instead of biting, pressed his face against my palm. "Harper," he whispered, the feral light receding. "Don't go." Relief washed through me. I'm right here, sweetheart. He bit then, but carefully, his small body relaxing as my blood countered the wild energy of his father's. Alistair watched with naked wonder as Sammy calmed, the fever visibly receding. "How did you do that?" he asked, when Sammy had finished and fallen into exhausted sleep between us. He should have been uncontrollable after vampire blood. I stroked Sammy's damp hair. "He knows me, trusts me. It's more than that." Alistair's gaze was intense. "You calm the hunger in him, in a way I've never seen before." Something shifted between us in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of bonds forming that went beyond our arrangement. I looked away first, focusing on getting Sammy dried and back to bed. Later, as I sat beside Sammy's sleeping form, Alistair appeared in the doorway with a cup of tea. "You should rest," he said, offering the steaming mug. "You've lost blood." I accepted the tea gratefully. "I'm fine, just worried about him. The fever's broken. He's stable." Alistair sat beside me, closer than usual. "Thanks to you, and you," I reminded him. "It was your blood that saved him, but your influence that kept him human." His voice softened. "You're changing him, Harper. Changing us both." I looked up, caught by the raw emotion in his usually guarded expression. "Is that a good thing?" "I don't know yet." His hand found mine on the bedspread, cool fingers entwining with my warm ones. "But I'm beginning to think it might be." The moment hung between us, fragile and new. Then the security panel on the wall chimed, breaking the spell. Alistair frowned, releasing my hand to check the monitor. His expression hardened instantly. "Stay with Sammy," he ordered, all warmth vanishing from his voice. "Lock the door behind me." "What's happening?" "The council. They've called an emergency session." "Here." He moved toward the door with predatory grace. "Whatever happens, don't open this door for anyone but me. Understand?" Fear knotted in my stomach. "Alistair, promise me." "Harper." "I promise." He nodded once, then was gone. I locked the door as instructed, then returned to Sammy's bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The distant sound of voices, angry, authoritative, filtered through the thick door. I pressed my ear against it, straining to hear. "The child is unstable," a cold female voice declared. "Your experiment has failed, Alistair. The council has voted unanimously. You have no authority here." Alistair's voice, usually so controlled, vibrated with barely contained fury. "This is my domain." "Your domain exists at our pleasure," another voice cut in. "The boy represents a breach of protocol. He must be contained and studied." "Studied?" Alistair's laugh held no humor. "You mean dissected?" I pulled away from the door, my stomach churning. Sammy stirred in his sleep, his small face peaceful for the first time in days. "I wouldn't let them take him. I couldn't." The voices grew louder, more heated. Something crashed against a wall. I jumped, my tea spilling across the carpet. Footsteps approached, multiple sets, heavy and determined. "Harper." Alistair's voice came through the security panel. "Open the door." Now, I hesitated, remembering his warning. "It's me," he insisted, voice strained. "Please." I unlocked the door. Alistair burst in, blood streaking his white shirt. Not his own, I realized with a chill. His eyes blazed with an inhuman light. "They're coming," he said, moving to Sammy's bed. "We need to move him." "Who's coming?" I asked, though I already knew. "Extraction team." He gathered the sleeping child in his arms. "The council has decided. Sammy is too dangerous to remain with me, with us." "They can't do that," I protested, following as he moved toward the back of the suite. "They can and they will, unless we stop them." He pressed his palm against a section of wall that slid open, revealing a hidden passage. This leads to the private elevator. Take him to the penthouse. I've activated the security protocols. What about you? His expression hardened. I'll buy you time. Alistair, no. Harper. He transferred Sammy's warm weight into my arms. Trust me. The boy stirred but didn't wake. I clutched him to my chest, feeling his heart beat against mine. Go, Alistair urged, his fingers brushing my cheek with surprising tenderness. I'll find you. Before I could respond, the main door to the suite exploded inward. Alistair shoved me into the passage and sealed it behind us. Darkness enveloped us, broken only by dim floor lights illuminating a narrow corridor. I ran, Sammy's weight growing heavier with each step. Behind us, muffled sounds of violence penetrated even the thick walls, crashes, shouts, an inhuman roar that made my blood run cold. The corridor ended at a sleek elevator. I pressed my palm against the scanner as I'd seen Alistair do countless times. To my surprise, it recognized me, doors sliding open with a soft chime. It's okay, I whispered to Sammy as the elevator ascended. We're safe. But I didn't believe it. Not really. The penthouse was dark when we arrived, lights gradually rising as we entered. Unlike the clinical whiteness of the medical suite, Alistair's private domain was all dark woods and rich fabrics, a place out of time. I laid Sammy on a leather couch, covering him with a cashmere throw. He mumbled in his sleep, fingers clutching at the soft fabric. The fever hadn't returned, but his skin felt clammy. Minutes stretched into an hour. I paced, checking the security monitors that showed nothing but empty corridors. What was happening downstairs? Was Alistair? The elevator chimed. I grabbed the nearest weapon, a heavy crystal decanter, and positioned myself between it and Sammy. Alistair stumbled out, leaning heavily against the wall. His shirt hung in tatters, revealing wounds that oozed black rather than red. Oh God, I breathed, dropping the decanter and rushing to support him. What happened? Politics, he grunted, allowing me to guide him to an armchair. The council sent their enforcers. I discouraged them. Are they gone? His smile was grim. For now, but they'll be back with greater numbers. We need to leave. Leave? Where would we go? I have properties they don't know about. Places even the council can't reach. He winced as he shifted. But first, I need to heal. I knew what that meant. You need blood. Yes. His eyes, normally icy blue, had darkened to near black. But not yours. You're still recovering. There's no time, I argued, already rolling up my sleeve. And Sammy needs you at full strength. Alistair's gaze fixed on my exposed wrist, hunger warring with restraint. Harper, you don't understand what you're offering. I understand enough. I knelt beside his chair, extending my arm. Take what you need. His cool fingers wrapped around my wrist, thumb stroking over my pulse point. This will change things between us. There's no going back. I crossed that line the moment I decided to help Sammy. I said softly, I'm already in this, whatever this is. Something shifted in his expression, relief, perhaps, or resignation. He lifted my wrist to his mouth, eyes never leaving mine. The first touch of his lips was gentle, almost reverent. Then came the sharp sting of teeth breaking skin. The pain lasted only seconds, replaced by a strange floating warmth that spread through my limbs. I gasped, unprepared for the intimacy of the connection, how I could feel his hunger, his gratitude, his growing strength flowing between us like an electric current. When he finally pulled away, his wounds were already closing, skin knitting together before my eyes. He pressed his thumb against the punctures on my wrist, stemming the bleeding. "Thank you," he murmured, color returning to his face. I swayed slightly, light-headed but oddly energized. "Will that be enough?" "For now." He helped me to my feet. "Rest while I make arrangements. We leave at dawn." I settled beside Sammy, watching his peaceful sleep, while Alistair moved about the penthouse, making calls in languages I didn't recognize. Despite everything, I felt strangely calm, as if the chaos around us had clarified something essential within me. The calm shattered 2 hours later. Alarms blared throughout the penthouse. Alistair appeared instantly at my side, as Sammy startled awake, crying out in confusion. "They're here," Alistair said, voice tight, "sooner than I expected." The security monitors showed armed figures in tactical gear flooding the building's lower levels. Not police, something else. Their movements were too fluid, too coordinated. "Council extraction team," Alistair confirmed, following my gaze. "Elite units." "What do we do?" I gathered Sammy into my arms, his small body trembling against mine. "The helicopter is 20 minutes out." Alistair moved to a cabinet, extracting what looked like ancient weaponry, a sword with strange engravings along its blade. "We need to hold them that long." 20 minutes. I looked at the monitors in horror. The team had already reached the executive floor, just 2 levels below us. "Harper." Alistair's voice cut through my panic. "Take Sammy to the safe room. Second door on the right, down that hallway. Palm scanner will recognize you." "What about you?" His smile was predatory. "I'm going to greet our guests." Before I could protest, the lights throughout the penthouse dimmed to a blood-red emergency glow. I clutched Sammy tighter and ran for the hallway Alistair had indicated. The safe room was a stark contrast to the luxury of the penthouse, reinforced walls, monitors showing every angle of the building, a small medical station. I set Sammy on a cot in the corner. "I'm scared," he whispered, eyes huge in his pale face. "I know, sweetheart." I smoothed his hair back. "But Alistair will protect us." "They want to take me away." It wasn't a question. "I won't let them," I promised, the fierceness in my voice surprising even me. "No one is taking you anywhere." On the monitors, I watched Alistair position himself before the elevator doors. He stood perfectly still, sword held loosely at his side, waiting. The tactical team had reached our floor, breaching the stairwell doors. The first wave rushed him from both sides. What happened next defied human movement. Alistair became a blur of lethal precision. The sword sang through the air, leaving crimson arcs in its wake. Bodies fell. Not all of them stayed down. These weren't human soldiers, I realized. They were like him, vampires, but different somehow. Less powerful, perhaps, but numerous. Alistair fought with cold efficiency, each movement calculated. But there were so many, and they kept coming. A blade caught him across the back. He staggered, recovered, eliminated 3 more attackers. Blood, his and theirs, slicked the marble floor. "He's hurt," Sammy whispered, eyes fixed on the monitor. I squeezed his hand. "He's strong. He'll be okay." But even as I said it, I saw Alistair take another hit, then another. They were wearing him down through sheer numbers, and still more poured from the stairwell. One of the attackers broke away from the main group, heading directly for our hallway. Alistair roared, trying to intercept, but 3 others blocked his path. "They're coming," Sammy whimpered. I looked around desperately for a weapon, finding only a surgical scalpel in the medical kit. Better than nothing. I positioned myself between Sammy and the door, scalpel clutched in my sweating palm. The safe room door was reinforced, but it wouldn't hold against determined vampires for long. I heard them in the hallway now, testing the handle. "Stay behind me," I told Sammy, trying to keep my voice steady. The first impact against the door made me flinch. The second produced a groan of protesting metal. The third, the door burst inward. A woman in tactical gear stood in the opening, eyes an unnatural amber. Behind her, two more figures waited. "Step aside," she commanded. "The child comes with us." I raised the scalpel. "No." She smiled, revealing elongated canines. "You have courage, human. Misplaced, but admirable." "He stays with me," I insisted, backing up until I felt Sammy's small form pressed against my legs. "The council has ruled. The child is unstable. A failed experiment." She stepped forward. "His condition requires specialized containment." "His condition is improving," I countered. "He's stabilizing. I've been monitoring him." "You?" She laughed. "A human nurse. What could you possibly understand about our biology?" "I understand that he's a child who needs care, not containment." I tightened my grip on the scalpel. "And I'm not just a nurse. I'm his mother now." The words emerged without thought, but I felt their truth resonate through me. Somewhere in these chaotic weeks, this strange feral child had become mine to protect. The vampire woman's expression hardened. "Stand aside or we'll move you. You'll have to kill me first." She sighed, as if dealing with a particularly stubborn child. "As you wish." She moved with preternatural speed, but I was ready, adrenaline and desperation making me faster than I'd ever been. The scalpel slashed across her reaching hand, drawing black blood. She hissed, more in surprise than pain. Her companions surged forward. I slashed wildly, connecting with one's face. The other grabbed my arm, twisting until the scalpel clattered to the floor. Pain shot through my shoulder as he wrenched me away from Sammy. "No!" I screamed, fighting with everything I had. "Don't touch him." The woman reached for Sammy, who cowered against the wall, eyes wide with terror. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "He needs me." "What he needs is proper containment," she replied coldly, fingers closing around Sammy's thin arm. The boy's scream pierced the air, not just a child's cry of fear, but something primal, ancient. The lights flickered, the temperature in the room plummeted, and then Alistair was there. He filled the doorway, covered in blood, eyes blazing with an unholy light. The vampire holding me froze, his grip slackening enough for me to wrench free and lunge towards Sammy. "You dare." Alistair's voice was barely recognizable, vibrating with power. "You dare touch what is mine." The woman straightened, releasing Sammy. The council has overreached." Alistair stepped into the room. The very air seemed to bend around him, pressure building like before a storm. "This is my domain, my blood, my family." "The child is unstable," she insisted, though uncertainty had crept into her voice. "I am the protocol." Alistair's power filled the room like a physical presence, pressing against my skin. "I was ancient when your makers were still human. I wrote the laws you claim to uphold." He moved then, not the calculated efficiency of before, but something elemental and terrifying. His hand plunged into the chest of the nearest attacker, emerging with something dark and pulsing. The vampire collapsed, body crumbling to ash. The woman backed away. "Lord Roth, please, tell your masters what you saw here today." Alistair interrupted, voice deadly quiet. "Tell them that Sammy Roth is under my protection. Tell them that Harper Evans is under my protection. Tell them that the next emissary who comes uninvited will not return to deliver a message." She swallowed, eyes darting between Alistair and the door. "The council won't accept." The council will accept whatever I decree. Alistair cut her off. Now go before I reconsider my mercy. The surviving vampires retreated, practically stumbling over each other in their haste to escape. I gathered Sammy into my arms, his small body shaking with silent sobs. Alistair watched until they were gone, then turned to us. The terrifying power receded, leaving him looking almost human again, if exhausted. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside us. I shook my head, though my wrenched shoulder throbbed. "We're okay." Sammy reached for him with trembling hands. Alistair gathered him close, something vulnerable crossing his usually guarded features. "I heard you," he said softly, looking at me over Sammy's head. "What you said to them." Heat crept into my cheeks. "I meant it. I know." His eyes held mine. "That's why it worked." "What worked?" "Your claim. Your protection." He shifted Sammy to one arm, his free hand reaching for mine. "You claimed him as yours. In our world such bonds have power." "I'm not one of you," I reminded him. His thumb traced the puncture marks on my wrist, still visible from earlier. "You're more than you were. And you could be more still if you chose." The implication hung between us, weighty with possibility. "The helicopter will be here in 5 minutes," he said, helping me to my feet. "We need to go." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can be a family." The word echoed in my chest. Family. Such a simple concept, yet one I'd never truly had. Now here it was, offered in the strangest circumstances imaginable. "What about the council?" I asked as we made our way to the rooftop landing pad. "They'll reconsider their position." Alistair's confidence was absolute. "What they saw today will give them pause. And when Sammy continues to stabilize under your care, they'll have no grounds for intervention." The night air hit us as we stepped onto the roof, cold and clarifying. The city sprawled below, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Sammy's weight was warm against my side, his small hand clutching mine. "And if they don't back down?" I had to ask. Alistair's smile was grim. "Then they'll learn why the old stories warned against waking ancient things." The helicopter appeared on the horizon, a dark shape against the pre-dawn sky. As we waited, Alistair's hand found mine, cool fingers intertwining with my warm ones. "You could have run," he said quietly. "When they came, you could have saved yourself." "No," I corrected him. "I couldn't have." Something shifted in his expression, understanding perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "No, I suppose you couldn't." The helicopter touched down, rotors whipping our clothes and hair. Alistair helped me aboard. Sammy nestled between us as we lifted into the lightening sky. Below us, the city receded, becoming a tapestry of light and shadow. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, a life I could never have imagined. But as Sammy's head drooped against my shoulder, his breathing deep and even in sleep, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. Alistair watched us, something possessive and protective in his gaze. When he spoke, his voice carried despite the helicopter's roar. "Welcome to the family, Harper Evans." The horizon bloomed with the first rays of dawn, painting the clouds in shades of crimson and gold. Not an ending, but a beginning, baptized in blood and sealed with a promise. I smiled, feeling the puncture wounds on my wrist pulse in time with my heart.